This is That Marketing Podcast.
Made by marketers for marketers.
Welcome to another edition of That Marketing Podcast, brought to you by Spotlight UK. In this episode, we're discussing the world of e-commerce with Jay Desai. Jay is head of growth at Trend, a B2B SaaS platform which connects brands with content creators. Specializing in demand generation and marketing automation, Jay is also the host of the DTC pod, which you can find on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Let's dive in.
Jay, thank you very much for being on the podcast. People will know that e-commerce is a fairly new venture for Spotler's UK group. So can you introduce yourself, tell us about how you got involved in that side of things?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a little bit more involved on the B2B e-commerce world, but I am pretty involved. I do know a lot about B2C e-commerce as well, mostly because our business Trend services e-commerce brands, but I'll kind of talk a little bit about me and what I do before jumping into all of that stuff over there. So I am actually the head of growth at Trend, and Trend is essentially a creator marketplace that helps connect brands and influencers together to create high quality custom content. So we operate on a little bit more of a B2B e-commerce model. My background personally, I've been in early stage B2B SaaS for the past almost 3 years now. Both times at the previous company I worked at and my current company, both times I've been the only marketer on that team. And so just kind of building out everything in marketing from the ground up. So what we do at Trend, like I mentioned earlier, is B2B e-commerce. So we're implementing a lot of the same strategies that B2C do in terms of, really offering this sort of self-service model and really scaling the transaction. So in terms of what that means for Trend is we operate on a credits model. So one credit equals one influencer and one creator to work with. And so brands are essentially paying for these credits and collecting these credits, similar to, how someone might purchase something on an e-commerce website. Maybe you're buying a beverage, and so you might be repurchasing and repurchasing as you're kind of using. So it's a very similar model in that sense. So that's kind of what I'm doing over here at Trend. And B2B e-commerce is really interesting, Richard. I'm sure we're going to dive into a lot of the stuff about it over here and some of the similarities and differences between this and B2C e-commerce. So I'm very excited to jump in.
Absolutely. Can you give us particular examples of some particular projects you've worked on that really sort of stood out for you in this field? Obviously, your experience is, as we just heard, really, really broad in terms of the kind of customer base that you're serving.
Yeah, so I guess the two big ones that have been really valuable for me are the kind of like current content strategy that we're doing. So, we've done a lot of work with freelancers, and that's really how we've scaled our business. And then what you'll probably be more excited about, as we are kind of talking about e-commerce, is our B2B e-commerce model. So we recently just pivoted about at the beginning of the year to this e-commerce model. Before, we were kind of more on your traditional SaaS model, which is the monthly recurring revenue model, looking at those numbers. And what we found out was really that our business and what people were using the product for really didn't align with that kind of recurring revenue model, which is why we switched to e-commerce. And just being in that space and understanding what e-commerce businesses are doing, it kind of made it a very easy and seamless transition for us. But yeah, we switched our model from MRR to more of this e-commerce model, pay per use, similar to kind of what you'd see on Facebook ads or Google AdWords. Same kind of thing where, you're really paying for the use of the product. And on Facebook ads, people are going to be running campaigns all the time, but they might sometimes take a break, or they might increase their usage. They might pull back their spend a little bit. And so that's kind of the same thing we saw in our platform. And that's kind of why we switched to this B2B e-commerce model over here.
Sure. Okay. What are the kind of differences that we need to bear in mind as we look at the difference between the e-commerce ecosystems for B2B and for B2C?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the keys over here are the process is a little bit different. There's going to be a lot fewer steps in B2B. There's going to be a lot fewer steps in B2C sometimes, and that's because there's usually only one buyer involved in the decision process. B2C is also all done on the website, whereas in B2B, there might be some other extra piece. Someone might be hopping on a demo, doing a live demo, maybe participating in an onboarding call. That really just doesn't exist in B2C. You wouldn't get onboarded after you purchase a product online. So those are kind of the differences in the process over there. There's also a lot less products when it comes to B2B. Usually, on B2C, you might have a few hundred SKUs, at least maybe, more than 10. Whereas with B2B e-commerce, you only have a few specific products. Usually, maybe it's a couple of different product lines or just one product offering and different types of plans for it. So it's definitely a little bit less of a process there. And I would say also one key difference is the speed as well. So in e-commerce for B2C, what you usually see a lot is, it's just you might see an ad or you might get a product recommendation and you're going to purchase that product almost immediately if you are interested in the product. Whereas with B2B, what you have to do is you have to talk to other people that might be involved in the buying process. You might have to look at your budget. You're probably not going to make a snap of the decision over there. And that doesn't mean necessarily that, the speed isn't fast. You still might be making a 1-day deal turnaround. It's just very difficult usually to be able to get the conversion within the same hour time frame that might happen on a traditional B2C website where, you have product discovery, you realize that this product might work for you, and so you just purchase right there. Whereas with B2B, you have the product discovery, you find this product, and then you take a step back and say, okay, let me see if there are any other competitors in this space that I might be interested in. There's just a lot more factors that go into the purchase process over there that can kind of drive the speed to deal to increase a little bit. But I will say, generally speaking, B2B e-commerce speed is a lot greater. The speed to the deal is a lot greater than traditional B2B, which is, you have a long drawn out buying process. You might have a product discovery call, you might have a demo, then you have a meeting with your team. There's just a lot more steps over there.
Sure, yeah. From my experience, it feels like B2B is more focused on kind of what the touch points are rather than the speed at which they happen, particularly for a SaaS brand like Spotler is as well. And I suppose the key, whatever speed you're working at, whatever speed your deals go through, it's all about driving those conversions in a really efficient way. What are the kind of biggest challenges that you faced in both sides of e-commerce, of building trend up into being a conversion machine, if you like?
Yeah, so some of the challenges that we faced, I guess, just the number of brands getting to the growth. So obviously we've got the creators and the influencers, and we're trying to figure out which one comes first. For us, that was kind of, bringing in brands for free and doing that at the beginning to kind of drive up the number of brands and finding really good high quality brands. So, that's kind of always the challenge. And I think that's usually the challenge for whether it's B2C or B2B. You just have to get people to buy your product. It's one thing to have the product creation. I think anyone can really go out if you're really motivated and create a product. But the hardest thing is, how do you get people to want to buy in over here? And that's kind of why we pivoted to a B2B e-commerce model, that self-serve model, because it's just a lot easier for people to get in when you're not paying some sort of monthly fee or anything like that. And you just have to get really creative, especially if you're entering, whether it's in B2C or B2B, if you're entering a market that's already not always well established, but pretty established, there are already some key players in that industry. You've got to be willing to break a few rules to be able to get ahead, because people are looking for different a lot of times, and they're focused on the benefits and outcomes. But to be able to stand out, you've got to be a little bit different, and that's kind of what we're doing over here, and that's how we're overcoming those challenges.
What kind of advice would you give to B2B marketers when they're trying to understand e-commerce? What are the steps they need to be taking to make sure they're getting off on the right foot to ensure success?
Yeah, I think it comes down to a few key things. The first thing is obviously making it simple. B2C e-commerce is very simple, especially now. You usually go to a website, or maybe you get an ad, and then you find the product. You can find a lot of information about the product. You can go ahead and add to cart and check out all on your own. There isn't really, any buffer steps or anything like that that's going to stop you from purchasing. I think you should definitely have that option available for B2B as well. And depending on what your product offering is, in terms of how much the product actually costs, I think you can make it even simpler for products that are under $100 a month and make it very self-serve. And then a couple of key things that I would also add over here is, just don't be afraid to get dirty at the beginning. I think that's a big thing. For B2C e-commerce, you aren't really going to have people helping out in the purchasing process always. You might have some sort of live chat functionality on the website, but outside of that, you aren't really gonna try and hold someone's hand through the purchase itself. So I think with B2B, a lot of people do somewhat not expect that, but are looking for that sometimes, and just looking for someone to be able to help them with that purchase. So don't be afraid to get dirty. Don't be afraid to help them get set up on the product. Don't be afraid to help be a really good driver about success. And it really just comes down to being buyer centric over there. And that's just something that's really key that I want to hammer in on. And then the other thing that I would say as well, with B2B e-commerce, what's nice is you really have good data. If you've ever done things with B2C e-commerce, or you kind of taken time to understand what they're doing over there, these checkout processes allow and kind of lean into having really well-structured data. And the same holds true for B2B e-commerce. So, what I recommend over there is really just having your data set up, being able to understand. I highly recommend, Google Analytics enhanced e-commerce is a great feature to have. Set up your Facebook pixels as well, because you really can track all of these steps of the purchase. Whereas, for a discovery call or a demo, it might be a little bit harder to kind of qualify someone as, what percentage they are ready to buy and things like that. Whereas with B2B e-commerce, it's usually very black and white. Either they purchase or they haven't purchased. So the data is definitely there, and you should be looking at that data, not constantly, but you should be utilizing that data to your benefit in terms of being able to use it to make business decisions. So I think that's something that's really key there.
Okay, and then just to narrow it down to really the effective or immediate tactical steps, can you tell us sort of one thing that everyone should start doing for e-commerce for B2B, and one thing that people do they really need to stop doing?
Yeah, I think one key thing is, like I mentioned earlier, enhance e-commerce on analytics. It's big. We've implemented it over here at Trend, and we do a lot of work with it in terms of figuring out, where our purchases are sourced from and all of that good stuff. So I would definitely recommend doing that and getting it set up if you haven't. There are a lot of good guides out there and happy to share them with you after this call, Richard, if you want to link to them in your show notes or something like that for the audience that's listening. But I say that's something that's really key. And the other thing I would say for a stop is just to stop building for desktop. So traditionally with B2B, I feel like a lot of stuff is usually built for people that are on computers. Even the websites, even the buying process is very much just built for people using computers versus using mobile phones. Don't be afraid to optimize for mobile as well. More people are using mobile every single day. And so I think it's really important to be able to have something that not only works for your computer, but also works for mobile. And you're still going to have on B2B a higher percentage of people using desktop versus mobile. But I think it's really important to just build for both because, as we continue to develop, I think mobile is just going to become more and more important for how people are using it and how people are using it as a B2B tool.
I think it's pretty clear from everything's gone that e-commerce is a very fast adapting, fast moving world out there. What are the key trends that you can see coming up for the next 6 to 12 months that e-commerce marketers really need to be paying attention to if they want to be successful?
Yeah, I think it's just understanding that there's this lifestyle change going on, and that's being that we're used to wanting things fast. Over here where I am, I'm used to getting an Amazon package sometimes the same day as well. I'm used to ordering something online and having it show up almost immediately, and it's kind of like this instant gratification. Same thing with social media that we have in place right now. You can post something, you can get instant feedback like right there in the moment. And so that's kind of made us as a society very wanting to move fast because we expect fast. We've kind of become accustomed to fast. So that's one of the big lifestyle changes that I see that's going on. And so with that said, I think what's important carrying that over into e-commerce is you have to build products and systems that are going to work towards that lifestyle. So you have to be able to, deliver value fast. I think that's probably the biggest thing that I would take away from there. People are used to having value delivered fast, and it's just going to become faster and faster. And so if you're not able to deliver that value fast enough to the consumer, they will end up leaving and trying something different. So I think that's something that's really important over there. And as we're looking to the future as well, just looking at some of these trends, I think just keeping it simple is really important. And for B2B e-commerce, one thing that I always recommend is, having your price up there, being very transparent about the process, and just making it really easy for people to access things. There's a lot of information out there that consumers have access to today in terms of reviews, peer recommendations, all of that kind of stuff. It's very easy to research a product on your own and get tons and tons of information. And so, don't be very transparent about that because people will find out, and just keep your process very simple because, like I said, people are used to having value now be realized faster and faster. And so the more you can keep your processes simplified, the more people can realize the value early on, the more likely you are to retain them as a customer. And I think that's the most important thing, regardless of whether you're in B2B or B2C, retention is just so key.
All right. I'm going to put you on the spot. Based on those trends that you've got coming up, what are your 3 or 4 key predictions for the future of e-commerce that are going to come down the line pretty soon?
Yeah, I think, specifically talking about, we've talked about B2B e-commerce a little bit over here, and talking about B2B e-commerce, I think more businesses are going to start using this to scale. It's a lot easier than building out a whole sales team or anything like that. And I think there's just going to be a lot more transferring between B2C and B2B. So, if you're a B2C company listening to this podcast, I recommend looking to B2B to maybe steal some ideas from there. We've already seen some of that going on with subscription models, and stuff like that. But don't be afraid to go to the other side and steal from there. There's a lot of innovative ideas that do work. And the same goes for B2B. Don't be afraid to steal from the other side. Don't be afraid to steal from B2C. There's a lot of great things over there. Something that I'm really interested to see how this plays out. It's kind of like my boldest prediction. I definitely see text message marketing coming into the B2B world from B2C. And, I think it's going to take some time to kind of figure out what that looks like and what that means. But I definitely recommend checking it out and kind of getting ahead of it or just on it early on. And another thing is, I expect to see even more of a data-driven approach and personalization. I think, that already exists. We're always hyper-targeted with ads and things like that. But I think it's just so easy to collect customer information, not even just from, picking up kind of the cookie crumbs and the metadata that's available over there, but even just on a personal one-to-one level, it's so easy to ask someone for a survey or kind of like, beef up their customer profile. And so all of those things are going to be really important. And the more targeted you can make your messaging, I think the more effective it is. So that's something that's really important. And I think, what we're going to see is as businesses continue to scale and grow, there might be a little bit less customer service to an extent. I think a lot more things are going to be automated right now, at least for me, when I'm thinking about even like Amazon, the way that they're purchasing and doing things like that. I don't know about you, Richard, how much you purchase on Amazon or things like that, but at least for me personally, I'm not really talking to their customer service very often or anything like that. And it's because their process is just so seamless. And not only that, but there's so many ways to get answers online. And I think, it's very easy to direct people to those answers. And so I think there's going to be a little bit of less customer service, but I think when I'm thinking about that, it's to the benefit of the consumer at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. I purchase more on Amazon than I should for budgetary reasons, definitely. And I cannot think of a single time I've wanted to get in touch with their customer service, whether I would know how to whether I'd know how to, even if I did.
Yeah, it's really just so seamless.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I'm picking up on a few things that you came up with there. Text message marketing. I think you're absolutely right. It's one of the things that we've had in the Gator Mail product for a while as an SMS function, but beyond reminders to people who've signed up for webinars, we've not had a strategy to use that so far. And I think it's definitely something that I think we built it as an add-on and not sort of nice to have, and then we're now as part of this e-commerce and various other bits looking to use that in some effective way. So I'm glad you said that, because that's quite a nice little product plug for me to shove in here. And cart abandonment's the other thing as well. Outside of e-commerce, one of the things we've been doing is reviewing our event attendees and event bookers and seeing whether some sort of cart abandonment can drive that booking rate up there. So yes, we're already working on one of your predictions to make that come true, to pull that into B2B a lot more, and I'm sure we'll find it for e-commerce as well.
Yeah, and I think the text message marketing is really interesting as well. Kind of just spitballing off of that, is it doesn't always just have to be very transactional as well. I think, we're very used to, especially for email marketing. I feel like there is a lot of stuff, and it's getting better. It's evolving. There's more customer focused things like I get in my inbox from consumer brands, things about like storytelling, like they're telling about the product and, maybe having a blog or something like that, and a lot of less transactional stuff. And I think that's what's got to happen on text message marketing as well. Yes, you've got to have, the standard baseline of, things like answering like cart abandonment, answering questions, all of that good stuff, and trying to build and enrich your customer profile. But I think it's a really good opportunity as well to just kind of connect with your audience. One product that I really like that does a great job of this is community. And on community, it's a lot of people basically just getting phone numbers and they're able to text their subscribers. So instead of doing email marketing, they're doing text marketing, and it's just, giving them a tip every day or helping them answer and understand some of the questions that might be going on in their industry. And so it's very much of a value driven approach rather than just like, hey, you forgot to check out over here, or hey, you forgot to buy my product, or hey, I had this new product that I just launched, go check it out. So it's very much value based, and I think that's definitely a good approach as well, that you definitely want to find a good balance between the value based approach and the must haves, which is obviously focused on driving your revenue.
Yeah, I suppose the way to approach that is probably just launch with those one product tip or one lifestyle tip, whatever your brand happens to be, so people start reading your messages, and then you can start sprinkling in the, oh, by the way, do you want to buy this? Because if you launch straight away with, hey, you forgot to pay us anything, people are just going to delete it and not engage with it, or even block your number. But
yeah,
if you start with those value ones, then they sort of build that relationship up from the ground, I suppose, just like any other medium.
Exactly. And one thing that I've seen that's really cool, every time I kind of get transported to this. I was recently, I just moved into a new apartment about a few months ago, like 3 months ago, and I was shopping for furniture and I came across this one website called Apartment 2B. And I think they do a really good job over here, and I'm always using them as an example for every time when it comes to value-based content. But they sent me an email, and I'm sure they probably sent this via text as well. But what caught me was the email, and it was just, the email was about how to pick the size rug for your room. And I thought it was really cool. I mean, I really haven't done very much research on what size rug I should get and stuff like that, but it was just so value based, right? There was no hard sell. It wasn't, hey, you should buy your rug from Apartment 2B or anything like that. It was just, how can we provide value to our audience? And that kind of stuff really works because, it's not a hard sell. It's just like, this is something our consumers could use. This is something our customers could use. And so makes me really interested in learning more about it. And then as a result, as a byproduct, I get exposed to the brand. And so I'm going to keep that brand a little bit more top of mind next time, because I'm going to remember that, Apartment 2B helped me find the size of rug I needed for my room.
How do you think we're going to get, do you think we're going to get branding in SMS messages, or do you think that's a little bit beyond what we can achieve at the moment, beyond having, signed off by the brand name rather than by the sender?
What do you mean exactly? Like versus like an individual?
Like if you send an email out, you can kind of, you can have your Spotler logo in the top, right, and you can have your address down at the bottom as a banner across there, and all your social channel buttons on there. I think, but I don't know how you do that in an SMS format. I wonder if that's a limit of the technology and how you approach that, if you can.
Yeah, I think over there, the key thing is just leading with value, right? So like, I'm just kind of, I have my phone open over here and I'm looking through some of the messages that I've received. So for one that I always get, I don't like calling out brands, but Ralph Lauren always sends me these texts about sales every single day, and I don't open any of them really, because it's always just about that. It's got the brand name in there and stuff like that. And so I actually think it's to the benefit sometimes to not include that information and maybe have it just live on the link on the website, right? So same thing with like Apartment 2B, like the logo was at the top of the email, right? But I think in text format, what that looks like is, hey, are you shopping for, and obviously, this copy would need to get cleaned up, but hey, are you shopping for like a rug, or we just put together this awesome guide for picking a rug, for like what size rug you should get for your room. If you're interested, or feel free to send this to a friend or something like that. And the logo isn't really on there, and I think that's okay, because you click into the link, and that's something, the copy is what gets your attention, and so you click into the link and you do see a little bit of like light branding on the actual web page. And so even though you're not pushing the logo very hard. I think the message has already been kind of ingrained in the customer's head where, I'm going to recognize this brand next time, or maybe I save this link somewhere. Like I swipe this link and save it in a swipe file or something like that for later. And so I think that's really the key over there. And the more value-based content you can lead with, so maybe you've got a guide for like what rug you should get. Maybe you have a guide for what size TV stand you should get based off of what your room size is, like where the walls are, or what size couch you should get. The more you lead with those like value-based posts, the more people are going to open it because they're naturally interested in the content, right? It's very customer centric. And then I think it's just going to be that repetition is where the brand gets really sticky.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So you lead with the value, and then that draws them onto a page where you can brand a bit more easily, and then you've earned the trust with high value copy straight away. Or, yeah. Okay. See how that would work.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's just really the key over there is just constantly leading with value. And if like still just kind of talking on that apartment 2B example over here, but if apartment 2B is the authority on all things on how you should plan your room, right? They've got tons and tons of content on how you should plan your room, whether it's your kitchen, your living room, your bedroom, and they're the ones that are leading the content front on there. And I'm looking at their guides all the time. I'm just going to make that, I'm going to know that that's the brand that's doing it because, the look of the website is always going to be the same. The voice is going to be the same. There's going to be that logo over there. And so I think it just all kind of adds up, and it's kind of this like snowball effect over time that really just leads to the brand being top of mind there, whether it's done through text message, email, blog. I think that's really the key there.
Sure. Okay. I think that was a really good dive or good starting point for everyone who's looking to do e-commerce in the sort of B2B or B2C, in a sort of B2B or B2C function. Just to wrap things up, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you if they want to take this conversation further and understand a bit more about what you've got to share on all things e-commerce?
Yeah, so I think you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Just search for me for Desai, and you'll probably be able, if you're connected with Richard, you'll probably be able to find me pretty easily over there because I'm connected with Richard. And if you're a brand, feel free to check out trend.io. That's all you have to type in over there, and we'd love for you to check out the website. We have a really awesome website, I think. And yeah, just check it out. And if you're a brand, give Trend a try. I think you won't be disappointed there.
Fantastic. All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for being on the podcast, Jay.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Richard.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of That Marketing Podcast. You clearly have wonderful taste. We hope you found the content useful and enjoyed it. We'd love you to subscribe wherever it is you're listening to us. Maybe leave us a review. If you can think of a topic that you'd like us to cover, or even if you fancy coming on the podcast and sharing your own experience on a particular topic, you can reach us at marketingteam@spotler.co.uk. Thanks once again, and happy marketing.